the country.
Okay, Bernie, we got to go. Bernie Rayno, senior meteorologist from AccuWeather, joining us from State College, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
Coming up, President Obama is expected to say he's going it alone. A preview of tonight's State of the Union address. You're watching Arise Exchange. Because we live in a global, interconnected world, business news no longer stops when the markets close on Wall Street. And what we've discovered over the past few years in the financial crisis is that events and news that happen even in the smallest countries impact the United States and the world at large. As we bring together experts and analysts and thought leaders and CEOs and companies across many industries to not only provide the macroeconomic view, but news everyday people can use. President Obama will make his State of the Union address tonight, his fifth, and this is the second one since winning re-election. Some of the themes that he's expected to touch on include income inequality, immigration, foreign policy, and healthcare. Patrice Lee of the Independent Women's Forum, a conservative group, joins us with more on what we can expect to hear tonight. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Patrice, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let me ask you a little bit about what we might expect from the president tonight. Last year, he went big. Immigration, guns, and some will say he accomplished neither. Do you think he's going to go for smaller gains this time around?
I think he's going to go for the same things that he did last year. We're expecting he's going to rehash and repackage a lot of his priorities. And what this means for Americans is broken promises and disappointing results. What's interesting, and you hit on some of the key issues of gun control and immigration reform. He even talked about universal pre-K. None of those things went anywhere. And so he's going, because he waited for Congress, this time he's going to actually take his presidential executive order to try to make some of these things happen. That's something very different and unique. And today's the release or the announcement from the White House about what he's doing with minimum wage for federal contractors is a great demonstration of what he plans on doing for some of his agenda.
And it has little impact, that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But you said that he hasn't really accomplished broken promises, for example. But to some extent, that's because Congress has not worked with him.
Well, and that is true. He certainly, for a lot of his agenda items, he's received a lot of blockage in the House and some in the Senate. And so I think he's recognizing that to be able to achieve what he wants to do with his policies, he's going to have to kind of go it alone. And that's an interesting perspective. Certainly, historically, presidents have used executive orders to achieve their agendas.
Well, George Bush signed a lot of executive orders. On the other hand, President Obama criticized him.
Absolutely, he did. And so it's interesting that now he's going to be using the very same tactics. It's a realization that when you're governing, you have to be able to find a way to get others on board. People who don't necessarily agree with you philosophically, get them on board with your policies. If you can't, then you have to look at the policies themselves and wonder, is this the right policy for our nation?
Do you think he's going to address the unemployment and job creation situation adequately, in your opinion?
No, he's not. What you're going to see him do is bypass job creation and focus on things like extending unemployment and spending more money on programs. But really what Americans need are more jobs. Now, as we know, the unemployment rate dropped to about 6.7%, and some may cheer that, but when you consider it's been at 8% for several months, and even more that there are millions of Americans who are unemployed and dropped out of the job market, that's not a good idea.
People have dropped out of the job market. That is really the key. So you do not think that he's going to create jobs here? In fact, can the federal government even create jobs? Let's just ask you that question.
No, but it can certainly create the policies that foster a good environment for our economy to produce jobs. So when you release the stranglehold and burdensome regulations on small businesses, they can then turn around and begin to create the jobs that we need in this country.
Let me ask you about the issue of the minimum wage. He's going to raise the federal minimum wage on new employees. Not a big tack, but you think it's symbolic.
It is. What he's doing, or what he plans to do, is to raise the minimum wage rate from $7.25 to $10.10 for federal contractors. Now, this is not for those who have current contracts, but for those who will have future contracts. It's a limited number of people or a number of workers, but it does send a signal to Congress that, you know what, I have a pen and I'm going to use it. And so I'm expecting you now, Congress, to take the next step, which is to raise the federal minimum wage rate.
Well, okay, it may be interesting to see a more aggressive President Obama. Patrice Lee, Senior Fellow, Manager of Outreach at the Independent Women's Forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Time now for a look at our business ticker, but first, looking at earnings. American Airlines, the world's largest airline now, released its first quarterly results.